Trump stormed to victory in the presidential race. The future 47th president was quick to declare the victory.
I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again.
Hours later, Harris conceded defeat but kept her fighting spirit.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
Now, Kamala becomes the second woman to have lost an election to Donald Trump in the last decade. That's despite plenty of criticism of the former president and business tycoon. Now, some are saying that this is a result of sexism. Political analyst David Axelrod spoke to CNN on this very subject.
Let's be honest about this, okay? Let's be absolutely blunt about it. There were appeals to racism in this campaign, and there is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism in this country. And anybody who thinks that that did not in any way impact on the outcome of this race is wrong.
Now, do you agree with that analysis? Was sexism a key factor in Kamala Harris losing the election? Get your calls in for this one now. Yasmin, I'm going to start with you. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't even think it's an opinion. We know, for example, that amongst the newish supporters of Donald Trump, a vast number of them were black men who did not want a woman, and a black man.
Where are you getting the assumption that it was
there's
black
a lot
men
of
who
research,
did not
there's a
want
lot of
women?
stuff that you can look up online about the number, the more surprising voters who backed this victory, Latino men and black men. And when they were interviewed, it was about her being a woman. It's astonishing to me, but it's true. And then, you know, the fact that she was a black woman was less important to them than that she was a woman. And for Latinos, you know, when Trump was coming so heavily down on migrants and the language he was using, it's their heritage. But the woman thing was playing out in this election, no doubt about it.
Where's the objective analysis? You're just saying it's playing.
No, I've been looking so much.
But the problem is then you go in from saying sexism, to then assumptions based on race. We don't know. There's no sort of.
No, but she was a black woman. No, I'm not making an assumption.
Well, you're saying Latino men didn't vote for her because she was a woman.
Yes, that is all research. I mean, there is a lot of material. I can't give you the source. I've been looking at websites here, and I was at the CNN. And I was at the CNN election party, which is the most amazing party. They do very good parties, and over and over and over again, analysts, journalists working for CNN, some very top journalists, kept saying they were worried that sexism was playing, and racism too. So Axelrod is completely right.
But don't they have their own bias at a news outlet by CNN? The problem with all of this is, like, if you lose heavily, as Kamala Harris did, you've got to understand why you lost. You've got to take ownership of that defeat.
Why do you think she was defeated?
Well, I think that she was a bad candidate in a lot of ways. She came in late. She was part of an administration which propped up and basically withheld the fact that Joe Biden had become senile. She was complicit in that. She was also a vice president that was largely absent for the best part of 4 years. And she also was quite vague on her policy platform in the biggest single interview that she did. And bear in mind, like, Americans have been struggling with price increases. I was out there the week before the election. The price increases, we don't really understand how much their living standards have been squeezed.
Jeff.
But when just let me finish this point. But when she was asked in her biggest single interview, what would you do differently from the Biden years? She said nothing comes to mind. So if you're then the continuity for something that people squeeze their lifestyle on historical levels, then you're going to lose.
No, I'm sorry. Can I just come back? All of that is absolutely. I agree with you. There were loads of reasons, but there was a central reason where people who voted for Trump voted for reasons that were nothing to do with this. It was to do with the race. Don't tell me, being a black woman, it would have been.
Certainly for some people it would have been an issue. I'm not denying that. But the only metric and evidence that we have is that it was to do with the economy, with democracy, with policy.
I said it played a part. I did not say it's the only reason.
Let's have a look at the gender demographic of the voting and who voted for which candidate. So you can see here we've got 42% of males voting for Harris, 55% voting for Trump, and females 53-45. So more females were voting for Harris than
some of those women might have voted
Trump.
for her because she was a woman as well.
So
the bias can play out both ways.
Yeah, it absolutely can. And actually, that was what I was going to say, is that it isn't too extreme either way. There isn't a massive sway there. I suppose that's sort of what you would have expected, I think, with this election. We'll go to calls now. Kay from Coventry, do you think sexism had a part to play in this election?
Absolutely.
In what way?
I'm completely in agreement with Yasmin. The thing being that society really hasn't moved on as much as we'd like to believe that society's moved on. We used to, in the olden days, say, oh, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. Well, I'm afraid those glass ceilings are still there. There's a thing called unconscious bias, is how we refer to it nowadays. This unconscious bias, we're born and bred with it. Literally, we are conditioned to believe that a person of colour is less than.
So but that's race more than sexism. Do you think that the race element had a bigger part to play than the gender of the candidates?
No, in my view, they were equal.
Okay. Well, hold on. Kay has a point here. And when we're talking about unconscious bias, the easiest way to describe this is if you were to go out and speak to the general public and ask them to close their eyes and imagine a doctor, 9 times out of 10 that doctor will be male. If you ask them to imagine a boss and paint a picture, or ask a child to draw a picture of an individual, a boss, a doctor, all of these sorts of occupations, they tend to be male. Nurses, carers, female, and that's where the gender bias.
Is that unconscious bias, or is that based on an analysis of statistical likelihood?
Not when it comes to GPs. I mean, there are certain places where we just have it wrong now, but is it a self-fulfilling prophecy is the question, and I suppose what Kay's getting to is that whether we like it or not, when we think of a US president, we think of a man, because that's all there's been.
And the other thing
and maybe that had a part to play.
I would say that, she's cracked some fairly significant glass ceilings.
But no, can I say, look, between them, Elon Musk, who was a great supporter of Trump, and Trump, have God knows how many children with how many women, right? And someone on Twitter made that point. If a woman had that kind of history, how would it work?
There's the other point, is that it's also said that women are held to a higher standard than men. And we've seen this play out during the election in exactly that example. Kamala Harris was criticised hugely for not having any children and what that meant for her, whereas nobody spoke about the affairs that Trump has had, nobody spoke about the number of children to the number of wives that he had, and had Trump been a woman with the same statistics, she wouldn't even have been in the running.
If you're asking me, like, do sexist attitudes still pervade in politics, then absolutely. But the thing is here, was it the key determinant in this election? And the point was, she had a vague policy platform. Now, Trump had a policy platform, which I don't know if he'll be able to deliver, and there's certain aspects of it that we in Britain should be worried about if he does, but that's democracy. He sold it to the American people. They like the stuff about immigration, what he was selling them about the economy. In the last stages of her campaign, she was saying, I'm going to legalise recreational weed. She just wasn't seen as a strong candidate. And what I'm saying is, I think that, above all else, was the key thing.
Don't go into denial, Geoff. You're a nice guy.
I do also wonder whether...
Why does it make me not a nice guy if I can
because
just
you're not
see
accepting
her flaws as a candidate?
Trump's entire campaign against her was totally sexist.
I wouldn't say it was.
It was totally sexist. He hated her voice. He commented on how she looked. He commented on the fact that she didn't have children. It was so sexist.
To be fair to Trump, he has a lot of criticisms in the way that he looks as well.
His weight. The Democrats went for his
maleness.
They went for his weight. Like, look, I don't want to be sitting here defending Donald Trump because
It's exactly no,
but it's not. I find him distasteful on a lot of levels as an an individual. But the point is that I just think the problem with, as we had in this country with Brexit, is when the Brexit vote shocked people, there was this pile-on to attack why people voted. Was it racist? Was it this? And it pushed people further down that line. Now, if the Democrats and the progressive left want to win again, the best thing they can do is try and take a positive view of why people voted and work back from that point.
I do wonder whether leaving the overt sexism behind, or the unconscious bias that is in society anyway, and the impact that that may have had in the election, the massive campaign issue was on reproductive rights for women, and I wonder how that played out and whether sexism had a role to play in that conversation as well. Sharon from London, what's your view on this election and where gender played a role?
Well, I basically agree with Yasmin more than Geoff, I'm afraid. I know that a lot of what I was seeing was left-leaning in terms of, when I was watching certain things around the election or what was going on in the campaigns. However, I used to see Trump just rambling, getting people's names wrong. I mean, the way that people focused on Biden, if he did anything that kind of focused on his mental capacity, it was highlighted. So I kind of looked at the two candidates and said, well, who is the more steady, rational one? Why are they focusing on her being a woman who has no children, which other women in this campaign were also talking about? I think it's, to me, clearly sex has a part to play there. I personally feel if she was a white male running on the same platform, Trump wouldn't have won. That's my view.
Also, just to be clear, because you're absolutely right, it was women criticising as well. Women are sometimes guilty of the worst misogyny in society. So what would you say to Sharon's comments?
Well, I'd just say about, you talk about her being a steady candidate, and I've seen a lot of people say that she was overqualified. She was a continuity candidate from a period of time where people got a lot poorer. And if you look all around the Western world, the incumbents during that period, during the cost of living crisis, people don't want more of that. Now, whether or not Trump can deliver these pie-in-the-sky dreams about economic growth is another issue. But the idea of actively voting for more of that was something that evidently a lot of Americans couldn't stomach.
She did have quite a lot to jump over, quite a lot of hurdles. The fact that, and I keep hearing this term, she was parachuted in. From where was the parachute? But anyway, she was parachuted in too late, which maybe she didn't have enough time
and Biden
to
had
run
his
her
own
election.
sexism against her.
But also that's an interesting comment. Yeah. But there's arguments that she picked the wrong vice president. She should have picked somebody from Pennsylvania.
She should have picked somebody stronger as well. He was not a strong candidate on any level. I mean, the campaign mistakes at the Democrat level were exponential. I just think that, in the aftermath of the election, obviously people are sad and disillusioned. But turning on the voters rather than the politicians that ran the candidates has never really worked democratically.
But looking historically, we haven't had a female president of the United States, and we've had very few female prime ministers in the UK as well. So I'm going to add us into this mix as well. Why is that, do you think, Geoff?
I think if Michelle Obama had run this campaign, she'd have won. Quite simply.
Okay,
stronger
but
candidate,
that's one individual.
Stronger backstory, stronger record.
I think the racists never accepted her or Obama. You forget that in that period when they were in the White House, a really strong couple, the amount of racism that was mounted against them. And that is why so many of the January the 6th uprising, a lot of it was to get the black man out. I mean, it was so overt and sexist. But I also want to remind you, Geoff, that a vice president has no power. It's the president who has the power.
But there have been good ones and there have been bad ones. And a lot of people, including on the Democrat side, felt that she was invisible for 4 years.
But hold on, you can't run an argument to say that Kamala Harris was qualified because she'd been vice president and then say the vice president has no power.
Well, they don't have power. The power is all vested in this one person, right? They cannot, unless he dies or he leaves, like Biden eventually left. But he was briefing against her even as he left.
Well, I mean, I mean, I don't know about that directly. He certainly didn't make it easy for her with his comments about Trump supporters and what he thought about that. And
he was definitely bitter about her being the candidate. And it's absolutely true to say that Biden was briefing and backsliding on certain things behind her. But again, that's part of the Democrat campaign,
Well, and the argument as well that Kamala didn't do enough to actually separate herself from Biden once she got onto the campaign.
Point.
We're getting lots of messages in on this. Thank you. Michael on X writes, if the women, Kamala and Hillary, had been any good at the job and Americans had faith in their abilities, I'm pretty sure they would have been voted in. You can't blame mediocrity on sexism. Interesting comment. Olive says, I think the USA is showing itself to be an increasingly misogynistic. Even the women don't support each other, in brackets, although there were also other factors.
But why
Biden
should the
held on
women be
too long.
obliged to support each other if they don't think that the policy platform or the candidate is sufficient?
No, I mean, they don't have to. It's just when you hear women potentially say things like, I don't think America's ready for a female president. That in
well, that's
itself
unfortunate. I would agree.
Do you
Yeah, if they
remember?
think
I
that, yeah.
remember when Hillary was standing, okay, and I actually didn't warm to Hillary, but she's a very bright woman with a lot of experience, and she had to do the cookie test. She was
the cookie test?
The women in America in traditional areas got very exercised and wondered if she could make cookies. So she made cookies to show them that she was really a woman. I mean, this is ridiculous. Would mother?
Is that a real thing?
I have
the
no
men,
idea.
The men have to do the barbecue test and see if they can flip a
It's
steak.
absolutely true.
I do remember watching a documentary on Hillary Clinton where they calculated the number of hours she had to spend in hair and makeup that Donald Trump didn't. Now, that's hours that take away from her
Look up the cookie
research and
test.
So that's true
campaigning and all the
in
things.
this industry
And that's
as
true
well,
in
yeah.
every industry. So there's almost an argument to say that women are on the back
cookie
foot from the
test really happened.
But the cookie test is an interesting one. All right, we're going to have to move on there. I don't think we came to a conclusion.